The message arrived like a polite thunderclap. Official bonding decree. You've been assigned a wife, Lyra, of the Kareth. Evan read it twice in the quiet corridor of Port Meridian. He was a human maintenance engineer, good with wires and water lines, not with politics. He looked up when the lift doors opened and exhaled a breath he did not know he held. She was already there. Lyra stepped out, tall and silver-eyed, wearing a pale cloak with softly glowing threads. She kept her hands visible, palms open to show peace. Her smile looked careful, like she had practiced it and hoped it would land gently. She spoke first. The decree expected confidence. You've been assigned a wife, me, she said, almost apologizing with her eyes. Evan's heart stumbled. He had trained for alien protocols, but not this. His classes taught greetings, gift customs, and emergency drills. None taught what to do when a stranger arrived and claimed your future. He searched for a safe sentence and found only truth. Assigned. He asked quietly. That's not how humans do this. I know, Lyra said. Our council believes bonding builds trust between species. They trust systems more than they trust hearts. She took a slow breath. But I prefer choice. 2. A cart of repaired drones rolled by with a friendly chirp, as if to check. Beyond the window, the station's ring showed a slow parade of lights. Evan's mind touched every excuse to leave, then returned to the simplest path. He could meet a person before he met a decree. What if we begin as friends, he said. We can learn before we promise. Lyra's shoulders loosened. Relief in her eyes looked like sunrise after a long shift. Friends first, she repeated, the words gentle and grateful. We can learn. They walked the long windowed ring together. Stars hung outside like scattered salt. Lyra asked about the station's hum. Humans called it white noise, but to her it was a chorus of useful voices. She tilted her head like she listened with her whole body. Her voice was low, musical, and patient, like water finding its path. It made him breathe easier again. Evan found himself slowing down so he could match her pace. In the hydroponics bay. Warm air carried the smell of mint and damp earth. Plants did honest work, Evan liked to say. Lyra leaned close to the glass, fascinated by the curl of vines in low gravity. In my culture, she said, we braid living threads into our homes. We say a home should hum. She held her palm near the leaves and closed her eyes. This hums. Evan poured 2 cups of station tea and watched the steam drift. I grew up fixing my father's old truck, he said, surprised to tell a stranger. Skin remembers the shape of a wrench. Lyra laughed softly, and hearts remember good hands. She tasted the tea and smiled. It tasted like the wind after rain. They traded small stories. They practiced each other's greetings, his handshake, her open-palmed bow. When they stumbled, they laughed. The decree still sat between them like a neat, heavy box, but it did not block the view. Some nights Evan would later stare at the ceiling and wonder what fairness should look like. Some nights, Lyra would watch the stars and wonder if choosing was only a beautiful word if you had the freedom to use it. Before they parted, Lyra touched the edge of the decree on her tablet. This paper is loud, she said. I hope we can make something quiet and true. Evan nodded. He did not reach for her hand. Not yet. We'll see, he said. We'll keep showing up. They stepped into different lifts that carried them along the same ring. Behind them, the hydroponics pumps kept their steady rhythm, and the leaves kept drinking light. Somewhere in the station, a child laughed. Somewhere else, a news drone wrote a headline none of them would read tonight. For now, there were 2 people learning how to meet without breaking what made them human, or what made them Kareth, and that felt like the right beginning. In the days that followed, Evan and Lyra chose small steps instead of big promises. They met in places that felt honest corridors, that smelled like metal warmed by sunlight lamps. The hydroponics bay where water talked in soft clicks, and the viewing ring where stars pressed their faces to the glass. They did not try to hurry anything. They just kept showing up and letting the quiet do its work. Evan brought Lyra to the repair shop after his shift. He showed her the bins of labeled parts, the drawers that stuck, and the old torque wrench that had traveled with him from Earth. "It belonged to my dad," he said, weighing it in his palm. He said, "The heart knows when to stop turning before the bolts snap." Lyra listened with full attention, as if the wrench had a story that might save a life. She returned the favor. In a little common room, Lyra unfolded a roll of woven threads and hung it on the wall. It was her clan song, made visible lines of light that brightened and softened as she hummed a low melody. "Each thread is a promise someone kept," she explained. "We record what matters with light. Touch it." Evan hesitated, then placed his finger on a dim line. It warmed under his skin and brightened a shade, as if the song recognized a new listener. He smiled without meaning to. They made a ritual of tea. Evan prepared mint and chamomile from the greenhouse. Lyra added a pinch of powdered bark from her world that tasted like winter. They sat on the floor, backs against the wall, and traded simple questions. What was your favorite place as a child? What sound makes you calm? What does your name mean in your grandmother's mouth? Sometimes they laughed at how different their answers were. Sometimes they sat in a sweet silence that felt like a blanket. Lyra wanted to learn tools, so Evan gave her small tasks. Replace a cracked valve, read a pressure gauge, trace a cable without getting lost. She learned fast. When she dropped a screw, it bounced once and began to drift in slow station gravity. She caught it with a soft grin and held it up like a prize. "The screw wanted to be a star," she said. "I convinced it to be a screw again." Evan liked the way she made even tiny victories feel like stories. One evening, the station dimmed to its night cycle, and they walked the ring while the rest of Port Meridian yawned and curled into bunks. Lyra spoke about the decree for the first time in full sentences, not just careful hints. "On Kareth, the council fears that choice will make alliances weak," she said. "They think duty is stronger than love, but duty without love becomes heavy and cold. I have carried cold duty before." Her voice wavered on the last words. Evan did not interrupt with a solution. He just kept walking beside her until her breath steadied. He told her a piece of his own cold. "I left Earth after my mother died," he said. "I wanted a place where every sound was new, so the old sounds would hurt less. I didn't plan on a wife." He tried to say the word lightly and failed, and Lyra's hand brushed the air near his arm, not touching, just present. It was kindness shaped like space. They set boundaries together, simple and clear. No signatures until both hearts felt ready. No public ceremony written by someone else. Truth before politeness. If either of them felt pushed by their own people, they would say so out loud. Lyra typed their rules into her tablet like she was writing a small constitution. "We can edit this," she said, smiling. "Living promises are stronger than carved ones." In the hydroponics bay, a thin leak had formed along a seam, leaving a shining trail like a silver vein. Evan handed Lyra sealant and a light. "Can you hold steady?" he asked. "Yes," she said, voice calm. She crouched, hands sure, and fixed the seam with patient pressure. When the drip stopped, the plant seemed to perk up in thanks. Lyra rested her forehead against the glass for a breath. "Homes should hum," she whispered, and the word sounded like a prayer. They discovered they liked simple jokes. Evan taught Lyra the human habit of puns. She groaned at her first, and then sprinkled them carefully, like spice. Lyra taught Evan a Kareth teasing phrase that translated to, "You are a pebble in my shoe, and still, I walk with you." He used it wrong 3 times, and then got it right, and she laughed until she wiped her eyes. Not everything was easy. A news drone hovered in a corridor and asked them to stand closer for unity. Lyra stiffened. Evan shook his head. Not today, he said. They stepped away without anger, but without apology. After, they found a bench under a plant lamp and let the soft heat warm the cool that the drone had left in their bones. Thank you, Lyra said, for choosing our pace. Evan nodded. Thank you for not running when I move slow. Before they parted one night, Lyra took off a thin, bright thread from the edge of her woven song. She tied it loosely around Evan's wrist. It glowed, then softened. On Kareth, she said, we mark a beginning with light. This is not a claim, it is an invitation. Evan glanced at the thread and felt something inside him unclench. He slid his grandmother's copper ring onto a chain and placed it in Lyra's palm. Same, he said, not a claim, a beginning. They walked to the lift, side by side, carrying a new, gentle weight, 2 small objects, 2 old stories, and one clear rule they had made together: they would keep showing up, with soft voices and steady hands, until the loud paper learned to be quiet. Outside, the station turned slowly. Inside, 2 people turned toward each other, not because they were told to, but because it felt like the truest thing they could do. In the days that followed, Evan and Lyra chose small steps instead of big promises. They met in places that felt honest corridors, that smelled like metal warmed by sunlight lamps. The hydroponics bay where water talked in soft clicks, and the viewing ring where stars pressed their faces to the glass. They did not try to hurry anything. They just kept showing up and letting the quiet do its work. Evan brought Lyra to the repair shop after his shift. He showed her the bins of labeled parts, the drawers that stuck, and the old torque wrench that had traveled with him from Earth. It belonged to my dad, he said, weighing it in his palm. He said, the heart knows when to stop turning before the bolts snap. Lyra listened with full attention, as if the wrench had a story that might save a life. She returned the favor. In a little common room, Lyra unfolded a roll of woven threads and hung it on the wall. It was her clan song, made visible lines of light that brightened and softened as she hummed a low melody. Each thread is a promise someone kept, she explained. We record what matters with light. Touch it. Evan hesitated, then placed his finger on a dim line. It warmed under his skin and brightened a shade, as if the song recognized a new listener. He smiled without meaning to. They made a ritual of tea. Evan prepared mint and chamomile from the greenhouse. Lyra added a pinch of powdered bark from her world that tasted like winter. They sat on the floor, backs against the wall, and traded simple questions. What was your favorite place as a child? What sound makes you calm? What does your name mean in your grandmother's mouth? Sometimes they laughed at how different their answers were. Sometimes they sat in a sweet silence that felt like a blanket. Lyra wanted to learn tools, so Evan gave her small tasks. Replace a cracked valve, read a pressure gauge, trace a cable without getting lost. She learned fast. When she dropped a screw, it bounced once and began to drift in slow station gravity. She caught it with a soft grin and held it up like a prize. The screw wanted to be a star, she said. I convinced it to be a screw again. Evan liked the way she made even tiny victories feel like stories. One evening, the station dimmed to its night cycle, and they walked the ring while the rest of Port Meridian yawned and curled into bunks. Lyra spoke about the decree for the first time in full sentences, not just careful hints. On Kareth, the council fears that choice will make alliances weak, she said. They think duty is stronger than love, but duty without love becomes heavy and cold. I have carried cold duty before. Her voice wavered on the last words. Evan did not interrupt with a solution. He just kept walking beside her until her breath steadied. He told her a piece of his own cold. I left Earth after my mother died, he said. I wanted a place where every sound was new, so the old sounds would hurt less. I didn't plan on A wife. He tried to say the word lightly and failed, and Lyra's hand brushed the air near his arm, not touching, just present. It was kindness shaped like space. They set boundaries together, simple and clear. No signatures until both hearts felt ready. No public ceremony written by someone else. Truth before politeness. If either of them felt pushed by their own people, they would say so out loud. Lyra typed their rules into her tablet like she was writing a small constitution. "We can edit this," she said, smiling. "Living promises are stronger than carved ones." In the hydroponics bay, a thin leak had formed along a seam, leaving a shining trail like a silver vein. Evan handed Lyra sealant and a light. "Can you hold steady?" he asked. "Yes," she said, voice calm. She crouched, hands sure, and fixed the seam with patient pressure. When the drip stopped, the plants seemed to perk up in thanks. Lyra rested her forehead against the glass for a breath. "Homes should hum," she whispered, and the word sounded like a prayer. They discovered they liked simple jokes. Evan taught Lyra the human habit of puns. She groaned at her first, and then sprinkled them carefully, like spice. Lyra taught Evan a Kareth-teasing phrase that translated to, "You are a pebble in my shoe, and still I walk with you." He used it wrong 3 times, and then got it right, and she laughed until she wiped her eyes. Not everything was easy. A news drone hovered in a corridor and asked them to stand closer for unity. Lyra stiffened. Evan shook his head. "Not today," he said. They stepped away without anger, but without apology. After, they found a bench under a plant lamp and let the soft heat warm the cool that the drone had left in their bones. "Thank you," Lyra said, "for choosing our pace." Evan nodded. "Thank you for not running when I moved slow. Before?" They parted one night. Lyra took off a thin, bright thread from the edge of her woven song. She tied it loosely around Evan's wrist. It glowed, then softened. "On Kareth," she said, "we mark a beginning with light." This is not a claim. It is an invitation. Evan glanced at the thread and felt something inside him unclench. He slid his grandmother's copper ring onto a chain and placed it in Lyra's palm. "Same," he said. "Not a claim. A beginning." They walked to the lift, side by side, carrying a new, gentle weight. 2 small objects, 2 old stories, and one clear rule they had made together. They would keep showing up. With soft voices and steady hands, until the loud paper learned to be quiet. Outside, the station turned slowly. Inside, 2 people turned toward each other, not because they were told to, but because it felt like the truest thing they could do. The flare reached them like a hot whisper turning into a shout. First, the lights flickered. Then the floor hummed too hard, as if the station had clenched its teeth. A calm voice on the wall repeated, "Surge safeties engaged. Check critical systems." Evan was already running. Lyra matched his pace, cloak gathered in her arms so she would not trip. They did not speak, but their feet kept the same beat. Hydroponics took the hit. When the doors slid open, a wet cloud rolled out. Steam hissed from a cracked reclaimer line. Water climbed the ankles of the room like a rising breath. Overhead, a grow lamp sputtered, popped, and died. Without the pumps, the roots would drown. Without the plants, the air would sour. This was not just a garden. This was the station's lung. Manual bypass. Evan shouted, voice steady but fast. He leaped the safety rail and hit the first panel. Sparks kissed his knuckles. He pulled back, shook his hand, and tried again. His mind made a clear map. Open the drains, restart the circulation, stop the shorting lamp before it lit the nutrient. Mist on fire. Lyra slid into the maintenance channel, water to her knees, sleeves rolled high, eyes bright and calm. Find the release valve by the feeder columns. Evan called. I hear it, Lyra answered. To her, the room was a choir of voices, the angry hiss of a leak, the low cough of a tired motor, the thready wheeze of a clogged pipe. She pressed her ear to the line, listened, moved, listened again. Here, she braced her feet, twisted. The wheel, it fought her, then gave in with a deep sigh. The floor drain slurped, the water line paused its slow climb and began to fall. Good, Evan breathed. He crossed to the dead lamp, snapped the breaker, and yanked the power coupling. Free. Darkness fell in that corner, but safety returned. He toggled the handlight and tossed a second beam to Lyra. It skipped across the wet air and landed in her palm cleanly, as if the room wanted them to win. They worked in a rhythm that felt like a song they both knew without practice. Evan knelt and pulled the surge box apart. Lyra held the light steady and read off numbers from gauges he could not see at that angle. He told her when to close a valve a quarter turn. She did it with exact care. Not more, not less. When a stubborn screw tried to float away, she caught it, laughed once, and clipped it to her collar. "Be a screw, not a star," she whispered, and went on. Pressure steadied, flow returned. The plants stopped, drooping like tired children, and lifted their leaves again. A thin leak still sketched a silver line down one seam. Lyra used sealant and patient fingers to smooth it shut. "Hold for 10 heartbeats," Evan said. She counted out loud, slow and sure. By 8, the leak had given up. By 10, the seam looked whole. Crew arrived to humans, one Kareth engineer, with towels and tool bags. Evan gave quick, simple orders. "Panel B needs a new fuse. Lamp array 3 must stay dark for now. Don't run full power yet. We'll step it up in thirds." The Kareth engineer repeated the words in her language for the others who were new. The room began to feel like itself again. Only when the last alarm softened did their bodies remember they were cold and wet. Evan's hands shook as the rush drained out of him. Lyra's hair clung to her neck, and her lips had gone pale with chill. He grabbed a foil blanket from the emergency box and wrapped it around her shoulders. She, in turn, reached for his scraped knuckles and rinsed the sting with clean water from a still working line. "You always check the hum first," she said gently. "I will always check your hands." "Deal," he said, and the word felt like a promise with roots. They sank onto the warm deck plates beside a row of basil. The leaves smelled like rain after dust. For a while, they let the room talk around them, the soft ticking of cooling metal, the small applause of dripping water losing its nerve, the patient swish of pumps back to work. Lyra's tablet chimed. She almost ignored it. Habit 1. She opened the message and went very still. The matriarch's seal glowed at the top, proud and old. The words below were winter cold. Delay is dishonor. Succession removed. Return for reassignment if the accord is not signed by next cycle end. She did not hide it this time. She set the tablet on the floor between them so both could see. Her voice was quiet and level. "I am no longer in line to lead my clan." Evan felt the sentence land inside him like a heavy box he wished he could carry for her. "I'm sorry," he said. Simple words, but true. He did not rush to fix what was not his to fix. He placed his hand on the deck between them, palm up, the way he had done once before. An offer, not a claim. Lyra looked at his hand, then at the basil, then at the ceiling where the lamp would soon be replaced. She slid her fingers into his and held on. Her grip was warm through the blanket. "I chose to wait," she said. "I knew the cost could be this. It still hurts. But I do not want a bond built from fear of loss. I want a bond built from what we just did, standing in water, listening, helping, not letting go." Evan's throat tightened. He nodded. "Then we will build that," he answered. "We will show both councils what choice looks like when it saves a home." A maintenance drone buzzed by, blinking a green light of approval. Somewhere, someone laughed in relief. Somewhere else, a news drone tried to get in and was politely denied. The station took a slow breath, held it, and let it go. The plants made new oxygen. The pumps hummed like a steady heart. Lyra rested her head against the bulkhead, eyes half closed. Homes should hum, she whispered. They will, Evan said. And so will we. Morning came soft and slow, like a hand on a tired shoulder. Evan and Lyra met in hydroponics to check the fixes they had made. The pumps hummed, steady. The basil stood proud again. A crew member from cargo brought them warm bread and a shy thank you. You saved our air, she said. Lyra bowed with open palms. Evan only nodded, because his throat was too full to speak. The room smelled like mint and hope. It felt like a good place to plan brave things. They booked a small meeting room with no cameras and no flags. A round table, 2 pitchers of water, 4 chairs. The human liaison came with a stack of forms and a pen that clicked too loud. A Kareth elder attended by Hala, her face lined with honor and years. Evan could feel old systems in the air, heavy as iron. He breathed once, twice, the way he did before opening a stubborn panel. If this is about trust, he said, voice steady, let us build trust in a way both of us can carry. Lyra folded her hands on the table. The woven threads at her cuffs glowed faintly, like quiet courage. We propose a trial bond, she said. It is chosen. It is defined by service. It can be reviewed after 1 cycle. We will work together on the station's heart water, air, food, safety, and we will report what we do, in both languages, with clear numbers. She met the elder's eyes. We do not hide from duty. We choose it. What numbers? The liaison asked, wary but curious. Evan slid a slim slate across. Uptime for pumps, he said. Harvest yield. Repair response time. Air quality. Training sessions completed. Crew satisfaction pulses every 2 weeks. If we are a good team, the station will breathe better. If we are not, it will show. No need for pretty stories. The Kareth elder listened with her head tipped, like a bird hearing a far drum. Duty is not a game of charts, she said at last. It is a vow before the clan. Lyra did not flinch. I know, she answered, softly. Yesterday I lost my place in succession because I did not sign on command. I accept that cost. But a vow born from fear is not a vow that keeps. I want a bond that hums like hydroponics after a hard night, because 2 hands cared for it. Silence. Stretched, not angry, just thoughtful. The liaison clicked her pen once, then twice, then stopped herself. Your trial bond, she said, would be reversible. Evan nodded. If, after 1 cycle, either of us feels this partnership harms us, or the station, we can end it with thanks and with honor, not as a scandal, as a completed trial. That way, no one is trapped by a mistake. He waited for someone to tell him he was naive. No one did. They did not win full agreement that day. Old rules do not melt like sugar. But the officials asked for a draft. Show us the words you would sign, the elder said. Words have weight. Bring us yours. Lyra bowed, open-palmed. We will, she said. Her voice held a small tremble of relief. They wrote the draft that evening in Evan's workshop, not in a grand office. The paper was plain station stock. The table had harmless burn marks from old solder. Lyra brewed their mixed tea mint, chamomile, a pinch of winter bark, canned set the cups beside their elbows. Evan used his grandmother's copper ring as a paperweight so the page would not curl. Lyra laid 1 bright thread across the top like a quiet banner. They argued gently over verbs and the shape of promises. They paused often to ask, do we both mean this? If the answer was not a clean yes, they tried again. They kept the language simple. We choose each other for 1 full cycle of the station. We will share service to keep this home alive. We will tell the truth, even when it is awkward. We will ask for help before pride breaks what is fragile. We will leave each other room to breathe. We will review our bond in the open, with witnesses, and decide together whether to continue or to part as allies. At the bottom they left space for signatures and for 2 seals, Human Operations and Kareth Council. In the corner, Evan wrote a small line, almost like a joke, and then underlined it because it felt true. Doors stay open. They took breaks. Evan chopped vegetables and made soup in his small kitchen. Lyra stood by the pot and listened to the gentle tap of the lid. "It sings when it is almost ready," she said, like a patient heart. She looked up at him. "Are you afraid?" He thought about it. "Yes," he said, "but not of you. I am afraid of crowds that want a simple picture instead of a true one." Lyra touched the thread on his wrist, the one she had tied days ago. "Then we give them a true one, even if it is not simple." Before sleep, they went to the greenhouse to read their draft out loud. The plants made soft green shapes around them. Evan read a paragraph. Lyra repeated it in her language. Hearing the promises in 2 sounds made them feel stronger, like a rope woven from 2 kinds of fiber. When they finished, they did not clap. They just stood close, shoulders almost touching, and breathed the same mint air. They delivered the draft in the morning. The liaison scanned it twice. The Kareth elder traced the last line with an old finger. "Doors stay open," the elder murmured, not smiling, but not frowning either. "This is not our usual way." Lyra bowed again. "Our usual way gave us a station that almost drowned last night," she said gently. "Let us try a way that listens." By afternoon, a message came. Consent bond, a Port Meridian pilot, accepted for review and provisional use. It was not victory music, but it was a clear bell. Evan leaned against the wall and closed his eyes. Lyra laughed, soft and bright, then covered her mouth like she had spilled light. They did not kiss. They did not make a scene. They simply touched foreheads for a breath and let the room hum around them, the way a home hums when people inside it choose each other on purpose. They did not pick the grand hall. They chose the greenhouse. It smelled like mint and wet earth. The glass ceiling showed a slow river of stars. The pumps kept a steady hum, like a calm heart. It felt honest here. It felt like the place where they had already saved something together. They prepared the space with quiet hands. Evan moved a workbench under the lamp that had survived the flare. Lyra laid a small cloth across it, white and plain. Their friend from hydroponics set 2 cups of tea. A human electrician came to witness, still in his orange vest. A Kareth engineer arrived with a clean toolkit, because work was part of their story. No cameras, no flags, only people who knew how to listen. Lyra's fingers trembled when she tied back her hair. Evan saw it, and did not pretend he did not. "We can still wait," he said softly. Lyra shook her head, then smiled a little. "We have been waiting," she answered. "Today we choose, and we do it out loud." Her eyes were bright, not with fear, but with care. They put their draft on the table. Consent bond accord, Port Meridian pilot. The words were simple and strong. They had written them at the same table, with tea and patience, and a ring holding the paper flat. Now the page waited for ink. It did not demand. It invited. The electrician cleared his throat. "I'll keep time," he said, glancing at the pump gauge. "Call it a witness duty." The Kareth engineer bowed to both of them. "I will witness the words and the hum," she said. "A bond should sound right." Evan went first. He did not try to make it grand. He made it true. "I choose you. Today," he said, eyes on Lyra, voice steady. "I promise to keep choosing when days are loud and when they are small. I will serve this home beside you. I will tell the truth, even when it is awkward. I will ask for help before pride breaks something fragile. I will leave you room to breathe." Lyra's shoulders dropped, like a weight had found the floor, and was no longer on her back. She spoke in simple English first, then in her own language, so the meaning could sit in both places. "I choose you," she said. "I will keep listening, Even when my heart is proud or afraid, I will share service with you. I will bring my songs and hear yours. I will not use duty to cage you. I will use duty to care for what we love. Evan took his grandmother's copper ring from its chain. He held it like something living. This comes from a woman who kept showing up, he said. It is not a claim, it is a promise. He slid it onto Lyra's finger. The metal was plain. It looked right there. Lyra unfastened a loop of woven light from her sleeve. She wrapped it around Evan's wrist. It glowed, faint at first, then warmer, as if greeting skin. On Kareth, she said, light brightens when promises are kept. It dims when they are forgotten. This one will learn your name. They signed, 1 pen, 1 page, 2 clear names. Evan's letters were neat, from years of filling repair logs. Lyra's script curved like braided thread. The witnesses signed below, a human hand and a Kareth glyph. The Kareth engineer touched the paper and nodded once. The hum approves, she said. The electrician tapped the pump gauge and grinned. So does the oxygen. They stood still for a long breath. No one clapped yet. The room had its own silence, soft and full. Lyra let out a shaky laugh and covered her mouth. Evan's eyes burned and then cleared. They did not kiss. They stepped forward at the same time and pressed their foreheads together. A simple meeting of warm skin and warm air. It felt like yes. Outside the greenhouse, a few neighbors had waited with shy faces. When the door opened, they cheered in a gentle way, not too loud for the plants. A child from Cargo held a tiny pot with 2 basil stems. For your home, she said. Lyra crouched to take it with both hands. We will listen to it, she promised. The child nodded, very serious, then ran off laughing. Messages buzzed on the liaison's console within minutes. Provisional accord received. Co-signatures pending. There were no fireworks. There was a small, clean relief. Evan sent a copy to his sister. We signed our page, he wrote. She sent back 1,000 exclamation marks and 1 line that made him smile. Proud of you for choosing your way. That night, they walked the ring without hurrying. The band on Evan's wrist glowed steady. The ring on Lyra's hand was warm from her skin. They talked about dinner and about the training class they would start for new techs. They made a small list of chores for tomorrow. It did not feel like the end of a story. It felt like the beginning of a very good day today. Before sleep, Lyra sent a note to the matriarch. We signed the consent bond accord. We will serve 1 full cycle. We will report with numbers and with songs. The answer came hours later, short and careful. Accord acknowledged. Serve well, return when ready. Lyra read it twice and breathed easier. The door was not closed. It was still open, as their line had promised. When the station lights dimmed, the pumps kept their steady hum. 2 people lay in 2 bunks, 1 floor apart, and listened to the same sound with the same small smile. Choice had found its voice today. It had been simple. It had been brave. And it was theirs. The co-signatures arrived without trumpets. A calm message blinked on the liaison's console. Consent bond accord. Port Meridian pilot is approved. That was all. No speeches. No parades. But news moved fast anyway. People talked in corridors and at meal tables. Some smiled with quiet relief. Some crossed their arms and waited to see if the sky would fall. The sky did not fall. The station kept humming. Evan and Lyra went back to work with their sleeves rolled up, the way they always did, because promises are kept in small hours, not in headlines. They started the training class they had promised. New techs to humans, to Kareth. 1 shy teen from the cargo deck sat on overturned crates and listened. Evan taught how to hear a pump's mood through a wrench. Lyra taught how to read the room by its hum, where stress hides, where rest lives. They drilled simple rules: truth before politeness, ask for help before pride breaks something fragile. After class, They shared tea. The shy teen took notes in tiny neat letters and said, "I want to work where homes keep breathing." Lyra smiled. "So do we." On the second week, another pair requested a trial bond. A Kareth navigator and a human cook stood in the greenhouse, hands shaking, and read their simple promises while 3 friends and a cat from the hydroponics bay watched. The cat meowed at the right moment, and everyone laughed until the room felt light. A week after that, a human medic and a human cargo chief chose a friendship accord only, a formal way to say, "We will care for the station together and for each other as friends." No one pushed them to make it more. Doors stayed open. That became the quiet rule under many breaths. At home, which was still 2 bunks on 2 different floors, Evan and Lyra made a new ritual. Every evening they checked the basil pot the cargo child had given them. They touched the soil, turned the pot a little, listened for the leaves' soft whisper. On nights when shifts were long, they wrote each other small notes on scraps of paper and left them by the plant. Soup in the warmer. Remember to rest your knuckles. Your light band glowed bright today when you helped the trainee. The basil grew bushy and proud. So did their sense of us. One morning, the maintenance drone buzzed Evan's wrist and projected a work order into the air. "Replace outdated decree plaque, Sector C ring." He laughed, short and surprised. He asked Lyra to come. They walked to the corridor where, on that first day, the loud metal sign had told a human he had been assigned a wife. The old plaque looked smaller now, like a stubborn relic. A small crowd gathered, some officials, a few neighbors, their witnesses from the greenhouse, and the shy teen with the tiny handwriting. The drone extended a magnetic arm and loosened the old plate with a little hiss. Evan caught it in both hands. It was heavier than it looked. Lyra held the new plaque while the paper backing still clung to its fresh adhesive. She read the words printed in 2 languages. Official bonding choice. Partnerships are formed by mutual consent. Service is shared. Doors stay open. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were bright. The Kareth engineer from their ceremony placed a hand on the wall and listened to the hum, like a midwife listening for a heartbeat. "It is the right song," she said softly. Evan lifted the new plate into place with careful hands. Lyra pressed the edges until it was true and flat. The adhesive set. The metal caught the station light and shone. No one clapped at first. They just stood and breathed. Then the shy teen cheered once, shyly, and that was enough to open the room. Smiles spread like warm light. The human liaison wiped her eyes and said, "About time," in a voice that pretended to be tough and failed. A message pinged on Lyra's tablet. She hesitated, then opened it. From the matriarch, "Your accord has reached the council archives. Our young ask for copies. Serve well. Return when ready. Doors will be open." Lyra closed her eyes and let a single tear fall, then laughed at herself and wiped it away. "I am a soft rock," she said, and Evan grinned. "You are my favorite, soft rock." They celebrated with soup and bread and a quiet meal in the greenhouse. The witnesses told small stories from their own old lives. The cat tried to sleep in the basil and was politely relocated. Evan watched Lyra as she listened, to everyone with her whole attention, as if each person was a verse in a long song. He felt a steady warmth at the center of his chest. It was not fireworks. It was a home stove that never went out. Later, they walked the viewing ring. Earth was a small blue thought in the far distance. Cargo pods drifted like sleepy fish. Evan lifted his wrist. The woven light band shone warm and even. Lyra lifted her hand. The copper ring looked plain and strong. "We could move our bunks together," Evan said, voice soft, not because of pressure, but because of ease. Lyra's smile was the small, true one that always undid him. "Yes," she answered, "not because a decree told us, because we keep choosing the same door." They stopped at the window, where, long ago, He had said we cannot sign today. They stood in the same place, but everything felt different. The station hummed like a choir that had learned a better song. The plaque behind them shone. Ahead, work, waited as it always does. There would be more repairs, more classes, more hard talks, more small jokes, more basil to water. There would be days when pride tried to sneak in with sharp shoes. There would be nights when fear knocked soft. But they had their page, their words, their tools, their tea, their light and ring, and each other. Evan squeezed Lyra's hand. Humanity didn't come here to be assigned, he said, almost to the stars. We came here to choose and to be chosen. Lyra nodded, eyes on the slow river of light outside. And to keep what we choose alive, she added. They stood in that gentle truth until the pump's hum folded into their breathing. Then they turned, side by side, and walked back into the work, carrying the kind of love that sounds like service and lasts like a well-kept home.